Part 2, how to tell what emotions are yours and what emotions are not yours. This is the skill that changes how you feel on a daily basis, because knowing that projective identification exists is one thing, but being able to actually discern it in real time, like, wait, is this feeling mine or am I picking up someone else's stuff? That's your potential superpower. It will take practice. It's like any psychological skill. It's like building a physical muscle. At first it feels clumsy, you feel uncertain, you feel like you're not doing it right, and you will do it wrong, but over time you will develop an intuition for it. You start to recognize the kind of signature of your own feelings versus others' feelings. There are several practical ways to figure this out, like tests. So first of all, the timing test. This is the simplest and often most reliable way to figure out whether it's yours or theirs. Pay attention to when the feeling showed up. Did you wake up this morning feeling anxious, or did this anxiety hit you the moment when you walked into your friend's room or apartment or office? Did you feel insecure before you met that woman for coffee, or did that feeling of unworthiness crash over you like 5 minutes into that conversation? Feelings that are yours tend to have a longer arc. They are with you across contexts and different situations. If you've been feeling sad for 3 weeks through multiple different environments and interactions, that's probably your sadness. But feeling that sadness suddenly in specific context with specific people most likely is your nervous system picking up on something in the environment. And often what it's picking up on is someone else's unconscious material. For example, you have a friend who you love dearly, but every time you're about to see them, you notice that you feel this low-grade dread, like you feel, I don't want to go feeling. And for a while, you might be thinking, maybe you don't actually like that friend, and maybe this friendship isn't working. But then you start paying attention to the timing. The dread shows up about an hour before seeing that friend, and then within like 10 minutes of being in their presence, you start feeling hopeless, maybe, or helpless, like nothing you really did mattered, like you were failing at life. But then you leave, and within 20 minutes that feeling just leaves you completely, and you're back to yourself. So in that case, your baseline is generally optimistic and energized, and that hopeless helplessness wasn't yours, it was theirs. They were going through a really dark period and couldn't let themselves feel it, so it was leaking out all over everyone around that friend. And because you love them and you're empathetic, you absorbed it. And maybe they will stop being in that, darkness, and then you won't be feeling it anymore. So when you understand that, you start seeing your friends with more compassion, and you can also learn to protect yourself by reminding yourself before seeing them that having feeling is going to show up, and it's not about me, it's theirs. The consistency test. This one is related to timing, but it's about a pattern over a long period. Ask yourself, is this feeling consistent with who you know yourself to be? Because you know yourself, you know your patterns, you know your emotional baseline. And of course, people grow, change, and we discover new things about ourselves. But there's a difference between I'm going through a period of growth and discovering that I have some insecurity, and I feel completely confident everywhere except when I'm around this one specific person. So for example, if you generally feel pretty, worthy, smart, successful, that is your baseline. And that's been tested across hundreds of situations and relationships. It is not a delusion, it is not a defense mechanism. That is genuinely how you experience yourself. But when you're around one specific woman or man, suddenly you feel small, unworthy, and that is a serious departure from your norm. It's not new self-knowledge. It's not that you're discovering your hidden insecurity. That's you picking up her or his disowned feeling. If it was genuinely yours, you'd feel it more broadly. It would show up in other contexts. But when it's specific to one person, that's your clue. I want to add something here because this can get a bit tricky. Sometimes someone does actually trigger something real in us. Sometimes we meet a person who, for example, reminds us of someone from our past, or who pokes an actual wound we have. and then we have a bigger reaction. And that reaction is genuinely ours. The way you tell the difference is by asking, first of all, does this feeling have roots in my history? And second, can I trace it back to something real in my life? So for example, you grew up with a critical mother and you meet a woman who has a similar energy. Then you might feel small around her because she's activating, her behavior is activating your old wound. That is transference. Your past is kind of bleeding into your present. That feeling of smallness is yours. It's just old. It's historical. And the work then is to recognize, okay, so this is my stuff. This woman is reminding me of my mother, but she's not my mother. I'm an adult now. I am safe. But if you can't trace the feeling back to anything, if there's no obvious reason in your history why you suddenly feel unworthy around this particular person, then chances are it's not yours. It's something you're picking up from them. The body test. Your body knows the difference between your feelings and other people's feelings, even when your mind doesn't. You know how Bessel van der Kolk said, body keeps the score. Your feelings are integrated. They make sense somatically. If you're sad about something real, like you lost someone you loved, that sadness lives in your body in a way that feels yours. It might be painful, but it's yours. You can locate it. You can feel where it lives. Maybe there's a heaviness in your chest, and maybe there's a lump in your throat. Maybe there's tiredness in your limbs. Maybe it's a headache. Feelings that are not yours often have a more chaotic quality. They don't quite make sense in your body. They feel like they don't fit, like you're wearing someone else's clothes. So for example, for me, other people's anxiety feels like buzzing, jittery energy, and it doesn't have a clear source. My own anxiety, when it shows up, feels focused. It's about something. I can name it. Like, let's say I'm anxious about this deadline, or I'm anxious about this conversation. It lives in my solar plexus in a very specific way, and I can feel it in my tummy. And borrowed anxiety, it's all over the place. It's in my shoulders, my jaw, like all over my body, and I can't really attach it to anything real. I just feel bad. I think like, why do I feel anxious? There's literally nothing to be anxious about right now. And that's the clue. If the feeling doesn't match your reality, it might not be your feeling. Get curious about your body. Be a researcher. Start noticing, what does my sadness feel like versus sadness I've picked up from someone else? What does my anger feel like versus someone else's anger when I feel it? I notice that other people's feelings often don't respond to the things that usually help my feelings. For example, let's say if I'm genuinely sad, talking to a friend or watching something funny helps me. But if I'm carrying someone else's sadness, those things don't really touch it. It just sits there, immovable. Well, why? Well, because it's not mine to process. That's actually a very good test. If you try your usual coping strategies and nothing works, ask yourself, is this even mine to cope with? The separation test. This is a very interesting test, and it's very simple. Remove yourself from the situation and see what happens. If you're with someone and you feel bad, leave, go for a walk, go home, and then pay attention. How quickly does the feeling disappear? If the feeling is yours, it will stay with you. It might even intensify when you're alone, because now you're not distracted by the other person. You have to actually be with yourself and whatever you're going through. But if the feeling drops away within minutes or hours after you leave that person's presence, most likely it wasn't yours. You were in their field, picking up their stuff, and now that you've stepped out of their field, you're back to yourself. I can't even tell you how many times I've had clients tell me, I don't understand. I was with this person and I felt awful and I was convinced I was depressed. But then I left, and by the time I got home, I felt completely fine. What's wrong with me? Am I making it up? No, you are not making it up. You're just sensitive. You're picking up on other people's unconscious material. And that's not a flaw. It's actually a form of intelligence. You are reading emotional data that other people sometimes don't see. You just haven't learned yet how to read it as data instead of mistaking it for your own experience. The pattern test. Once you start paying attention, you will notice patterns. There will be certain people who consistently evoke the same feeling in you. And that's incredibly useful information. If every time you're around your, let's say, mother, and you feel guilty, and that guilt lifts as soon as you leave her presence, it is not random. It is her projecting her guilt onto you. She feels guilty about something, maybe how she parented you, maybe some choices that she made in her life, and she cannot feel it. She cannot own it, so you feel it instead. If every time you're around a particular friend and you feel anxious, even though nothing anxiety-provoking is happening, that friend is probably carrying repressed anxiety. They might seem totally calm on the surface, but underneath, they might be terrified, and it is leaking out. So start keeping track. It's actually a very interesting journey. You don't have to be weird about it, but mentally note or jot down, when I'm with this person, I tend to feel X. When I'm with that person, I feel something else. And then compare that to how you feel when you're alone or with people who don't trigger those responses. What is your baseline? Who are the people you're with where you just feel like yourself? Not better, not worse, just yourself. So those people who let you feel like yourself, they are precious, they're gold. They're not projecting onto you, they're not using you as a container. They've done, most likely, enough of their own work so they can hold their own feelings. Spend more time with those people. The reality check test. So this one requires some honesty with yourself. When you're feeling something intense, stop and ask, does this match the objective reality of my life right now? If you are feeling like a loser, but objectively you're doing well, you have relationships that nourish you, you're taking care of yourself, you have good work, that's a mismatch. The feeling doesn't fit the facts. Now I want to be careful here because sometimes we do feel things that don't match our external circumstances, and that's valid. For example, depression can make you feel empty even if you have everything. Anxiety doesn't care if your life is safe. But what I'm talking about is more specific than that. I'm talking about feelings that spike in particular relational contexts and do not match your life. Like you walk into a room feeling fine about your career, and then you're talking to someone who's secretly insecure about their career, and suddenly you're flooded with this feeling of, I'm not doing enough, I'm behind, I'm failing. But nothing about your actual career situation has changed in the last 5 minutes. And that's a clue. The feeling is coming from outside you. The projection test. Sometimes you can tell a feeling isn't yours because it doesn't match what the other person is saying, but it does match what they are radiating. They're sitting there telling you how great everything is, how happy they are, how well their life is going, but you feel sad, or you feel anxious, or you feel angry, even though there's nothing to be angry about. That dissonance between their words and what you're picking up might be projective identification. They're saying one thing, but unconsciously they are communicating something else. And your system is picking up on the unconscious message. Trust that. If someone is telling you they're fine, but you feel a wave of despair when you're around them, you're probably sensing that something they can't let themselves know yet. And this happens a lot with people who are very defended, very invested in a particular self-image. They will smile, tell you that everything is great, but their unconscious is screaming for help. And if you're sensitive, you pick up on that scream. What to do once you know? Okay, so let's say you've done all these tests and you're pretty sure that the feeling you're experiencing isn't yours. You've determined it's something you picked up from someone else. So now what? First, name it. Literally, say to yourself, this anxiety isn't mine. This is hers anxiety and I'm picking up on it. Or this feeling of unworthiness, that's not mine. That's something happening in this woman's psyche, not mine. Just that act of naming it, of externalizing it creates a boundary. It reminds you where you end and the other person begins. Second, don't try to fix it. Don't try to process it like it's yours. You can't heal someone else's feeling by carrying it. You're not helping them by absorbing their pain. In fact, you are actually enabling them to avoid it. Third, give it back. And by that, well, I don't mean literally hand it to them or tell them, hey, this is your stuff, not mine. I mean energetically, don't take it on. Imagine it like you are, let's say, Teflon pan surface, like their feeling slides right off you. You can perceive it, you can have compassion for it, but you don't absorb it. Come up with something else like it slides away. Some people find it helpful to visualize, or you can imagine a bubble around yourself and their feeling is outside the bubble. Or imagine handing it back to them wrapped in gold light, or imagine saying internally, this belongs to you, not me. Fourth, ground yourself in your truth. Remind yourself of who you actually are. If that feeling is I'm unworthy, counter it with your truth. I'm worthy, I know this about myself. This other feeling is just like weather that I am walking through, I'm passing by. And fifth, compassion. Remember, if someone is projecting heavily onto you, they are suffering. They're carrying something they can't feel, and that's a lonely place to be. It's a painful place to be. You can have compassion for that while you still maintain your boundary. You can silently wish them well. You can hope that they find their way, and you can hope that they heal. But you do not have to carry their burden to prove that you care. Once again, let's be real, the skill takes time to develop. And you're going to fail, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to sometimes think a feeling is yours when it's not, or think it's not yours when it is. That's okay. This is a practice, and it's actually a lot of fun. But over time, you will 100%, 200% get better at it. You'll develop an almost instant recognition, like, oh, that's not mine. And you'll be able to move through the world with so much more freedom. Because here's what happens when you get good at this. You stop taking everything so personally. You stop thinking that every bad feeling you have means something is wrong with you. You start seeing yourself more clearly, and you start to see other people more clearly too. And you also develop compassion for how much pain people carry. And also, your boundaries become stronger because you're not carrying it for them. And that combination, clarity, compassion, and boundaries, that's what allows you to stay open-hearted in a world full of people who are unconsciously projecting all over the place. And I do too, and you do. We all do that. But you don't have to close down or shut up your sensitivity. You just learn to use it wisely. You become like a therapist for yourself in your own life. You're able to sense what's happening in the room, able to pick up on unconscious material, but not drowning in it. You become able to stay grounded in yourself while still being present to others. That's one of the most important skills in life, because once you have that, you're free. You get to choose how you feel based on your truth, not based on whatever emotional weather you happen to be walking through. And you get to know yourself. You know what I think the real gift of understanding countertransference is? It's freedom. It's that freedom to walk into any situation knowing that your worth isn't actually up for debate. If you feel suddenly small around someone, that's information about them, not information about you. And it's also the freedom to choose who you spend time with, to notice who makes you feel more like yourself and who makes you feel like not yourself. Because, why would we spend our lives carrying other people's repressed pain? We don't want to shrink ourselves because someone else can't handle their own bigness or can't tolerate your bigness. You get to be around people who see you, who celebrate you, who give you room to be fully yourself. And those people exist. And when you find those people, hold on to them because they are doing their work. They're not using you as a dumping ground. They're showing up whole, and they are inviting you to do the same. And maybe you are that person for others, or will become that person for others too. Maybe you can do enough of your own work that you're not unconsciously projecting yourself onto everyone around you. Maybe you can be the person who makes others feel expanded and loved just by being in your presence. That's the goal, I think. Not to be perfect, not to never have any repressed feelings, because we're all human. We all have flaws, we all project, we all sometimes dump at other people, we all have blind spots. But to be aware enough that we are not constantly leaking our unconscious all over everyone else. To be integrated enough that people feel safe around us. People feel free around us. So yeah, that weird thing that happens when you're around certain people and you suddenly don't feel like yourself, it's not random. It's not you being crazy. It's an actual psychological mechanism, one that's been studied and documented and understood for over 100 years. And now you know about it, and now you know how to work with it, and knowing about it and knowing how to navigate it changes your life. Because now, when you feel small around someone, you can pause and ask, is this mine or is this theirs? And most of the time, it's theirs. And you can give it back. You can stay in your truth. You can remember who you actually are. And that, my friend, is how you stay free. Take care.